Meet Claudie, an American girl. Chapter 7. Figuring It Out. That night, no music rang out from the phonograph. No Selma singing in her room or Porter practicing his cornet. Nobody laughing or telling stories around the kitchen table. After dinner, the boarders discussed only dollars and cents. Sitting at the top of the stairs, Claudie patted Dizzy Dot and eavesdropped on the adults. Miss Amelia had indeed fallen behind on her rent. The building owner told her that if he did not receive what she owed by the end of next month, he would evict her and all of her boarders. The kitchen broke into a dozen overlapping conversations, everyone talking over and around one another until Claudie couldn't think straight. "We have rights, you know," Mama said. "We could talk to someone at the tenant association." "It's criminal," Salma said. "You know, we pay higher rent in Harlem than folks do in any other part of New York City." Claudie didn't know that, but before she could wonder why, Porter said, "Of course we do. If Negroes can only live in certain places, you can charge them whatever you want. Where else are we gonna go?" He let out a frustrated sigh. Beside him, Gwen had been sitting quietly, chewing on the end of one of her paintbrushes. She finally turned to Miss Amelia and said, "How much do we owe?" Miss Amelia dabbed her eyes with a kerchief and answered so quietly, Claudie could barely hear. "More than $100. On the stairs, Claudie rubbed the dog and fretted. She told her brother that everything would be fine, but how could she be sure? What would happen if they couldn't come up with the money? Could her parents even afford an apartment on their own? Would they have to find another boarding house? What if it wasn't as nice as this one? Claudie had heard stories from classmates who lived with their families in cramped rooms, much like the stories Claudie's parents had told her about the apartment they had lived in before they came to Miss Amelia's. One friend had told her about a cousin who slept in a bathtub. Would she have to sleep in a bathtub? Her heart raced as she imagined where her family might live. Then she heard the creak of the stairs, and her father appeared. He sat on the step below her, reaching out to ruffle Dizzy's fur. "It'll be all right," he said. "Are you going to fight it?" Claudie asked. "Like Mama said?" Daddy sighed. "A lawyer will be more expensive than rent," he said. "Best we find a way to raise the money." "But what if we can't?" she said. "Where will we go?" "I don't know yet," he said. "But don't you worry none. We'll figure something out." Daddy kissed Claudie's forehead, and for a small moment, she felt better. Still, she didn't want to move from the boarding house. Claudie couldn't imagine her life without Miss Amelia cooking oxtail when Claudie came home from school, Selma teaching her how to tie her shoe, or Porter helping her balance as she learned to ride a scooter. Even Grumpy Gwen leaning over the breakfast table to correct Claudie's math homework. How could she live somewhere else? The boarding house was her home. "How are we supposed to find that much money?" Claudie asked. Her father let out a low whistle. "You know what folks started doing?" he said. She shook her head. "They call it a rent party," he said. "If you're a little short, you throw a party and charge folks to get in. Some music, some dancing. Everybody has a good time, and at the end of the night, you make enough to cover your rent." He laughed. "Too bad. I don't think we'd throw a party big enough to pay Miss Amelia's back rent. Over the next few days, the boarders fell into a flurry to make extra cash. Daddy picked up more shifts at Angelo's. Porter began to play his cornet outside subway stations for tips and returned home with spare coins jingling in his case. Selma started teaching voice lessons to the neighborhood children, which meant that at any given hour, someone was warbling in the boarding house. The boarders put the extra money they earned in a coffee can in the kitchen, and Claudie would tiptoe downstairs at night to take a peek. She didn't have to pour out the coins to count them. She could tell by glancing into the pitiful can that these coins would never be enough. "Maybe you could find the money," Nina suggested one afternoon. The girls were sitting on Nina's stoop, licking ice cream cones. Nina lived on what was known as Striver's Row, and each time Claudie visited, she felt in awe of the big row houses that stretched along the block. She'd gone to Christmas party at Nina's and had met her neighbors, doctors and lawyers and architects. So different from the parties at Miss Amelia's, which are filled with ragtag artists. But Claudia didn't want Nina's big house or a pedal car resting against the curb, or even Nina's talent. She just wanted to live in the only place she'd ever called home. "Find the money?" Claudie said. "How?" "Well, if Miss Amelia owes money, you could help her pay it back," Nina said. She suggested it so simply, as if it were easy as overturning a sofa cushion to find loose change. "But where am I supposed to find the money?" Claudie said. "You could sell something, like a lemonade stand or a sidewalk sale," Nina said. Now that was an idea. Claudie didn't own anything valuable herself, but if all the boarders offered an item or two, then again, who owned something that they could part with? Porter couldn't work without his cornet. Selma owned one fancy dress, a long, sparkly black gown that she wore at her concerts. She hand-washed it between shows, hanging it up to dry inside the shower. Gwen couldn't sell her easel or brushes. "Hi, welcome." Or paints. And who would Mama be without her Underwood typewriter? If the item was valuable, then no boarder could live without it. And if it wasn't valuable, then why bother selling it at all? No, Claudie would have to find money somewhere else. That night, Claudie tossed and turned in bed. She couldn't stop thinking about what Daddy had told her about rent parties. Why couldn't the boarders do the same? After all, each artist had a special talent to share. Why couldn't they put on a variety show? They could sell tickets around the neighborhood to earn the rent money. Claudie knew that she didn't have a talent to perform on stage, but maybe she could organize the show. She would have to gather the performers, find a space to rehearse, and figure out how to get word out about the show. All night, Claudie mulled over the possibilities. Sometimes the idea seemed brilliant, other times completely foolish. By daybreak, she had come to a decision. Instead of her stomach twisting with dread, she felt energized. Could she really pull it off? Could she sell enough tickets to save the boarding house?